Yeah, and another way to look at it is also if you go back to September of 25, they were paying 10% to STRC shareholders and were able to pick up Bitcoin at around, what was it, 100, 110K. And now they have to pay 11.25%. So they increased the dividend payments by 1%, but they're able to pick up Bitcoin that is 30% cheaper than it was in the summer, right? So it's a bit more expensive for strategy, but on the other side, they're able to pick up Bitcoin that is 30% cheaper. So this is the very nice thing about this instrument.
How many chairs are you sitting on right now?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to One Chair. None of what you will hear is financial advice, and this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. So as always, let's start this one with the MSTR buys of the week. They have issued STRC 78 million worth of, and they also hit the common stock ATM 90 million worth. So in total, it's 169 million that they raised last week to buy around 2,500 Bitcoin. It's nice to see that they are able to issue STRC again because it hit the $100 mark last week, so they were able to issue that. And we're also seeing that the average purchase price of the Bitcoin they bought was around 67,000. So it shows that they are actually buying at a good price at the market. I think there were some discussions the prior week where the average buy was a lot higher than what Bitcoin traded at during that week. But the explanation was that they bought all of the Bitcoin on the Monday when the price was still higher. And this week we can see that they probably bought throughout the week here because they were able to buy at quite a low price here. And speaking of STRC, I think it's worth going into a slide that it comes out of Strategy's earnings call here, where we can see that STRC really has seasoned, and that's the title of the slide that they use here. And I think it's great to show actually why STRC is such an interesting product, right? You can see here on the blue line is the price of STRC, that it's very close to 100 since August of last year with some dips, but it always comes back to 100. And this is while Bitcoin in that period of time is down 30%, right? So there's massive pressure on Bitcoin and on all Bitcoin related products. But nonetheless, STRC is able to stay relatively flat or is even up 1% over this period of time. And the reason that is the stated goal of Strategy to peg it at 100. But you also see that the way they do that is by increasing the STRC dividend rate, right? So we went from 10% in September to 11.25% now. And that's how they are able to get this product to keep its peg, even though the underlying asset Bitcoin is down significantly. And this is what's so interesting now with those products in the market, right? You can see that because they are able to keep the peg on STRC, as we've seen this week, they're able to purchase Bitcoin, to issue more of STRC shares and purchase Bitcoin that is 30% cheaper than 6 months ago. So they're really able to take advantage of the bear market here. And if this product continues to be so successful and does keep its peg here over the next months and years, it will just be a constant accumulation machine for Strategy, irrespective of the price of Bitcoin.
Yeah, what I also really like about this slide is that it really shows the amplification, right? The power of amplification, because you see that you're paying the shareholders of STRC the same amount every month. So 11.25% on an annual basis. However, you're able to pick at a discount Bitcoin here of around 30% discounted. But when the price of Bitcoin goes higher, probably the dividend rates will be at around the same rate. So year over year, you will have the dividend payment that will remain the same. However, when the price of Bitcoin goes higher, the shareholders will get all of this additional benefit from the volatility of Bitcoin from the upside. I would really be interested to see this slide in maybe in a few months or in a year, once Bitcoin is starting to gain value compared to STRC.
Yeah, and another way to look at it is also if you go back to September of 25, they were paying 10% to STRC shareholders, and were able to pick up Bitcoin at around, what was it, 100, 110K. And now they have to pay 11.25%. So they increased the dividend payments by 1%, but they're able to pick up Bitcoin that is 30% cheaper than it was in the summer, right? So it's a bit more expensive for strategy, but on the other side, they're able to pick up Bitcoin that is 30% cheaper. So this is the very nice thing about this instrument too. And now we're seeing how it works when Bitcoin's in a downtrend. It's too early to say how it will work when it's in an uptrend, but probably it will be the reverse, right? If we see that now, let's say in 6 months from now, Bitcoin is up 30%, STRC will be kept at 100 by lowering the dividend rate potentially, right? Because they also need to make sure STRC doesn't go too high. So either the dividend rate will be lowered, or they will be able to issue so much more STRC that they'll accumulate even more Bitcoin here.
An additional thing here is the compounding effect, right? So just to piggyback on what I mentioned before, so they'll be able to pay those dividends year over year. So per share of STRC, $11.25, but the price of Bitcoin will compound over time. So this is again going back to the simplification aspect I was talking about. So again, curious to see this slide in a couple of years.
All right. So now moving from strategy to Metaplanet, we just got this week the results of the full year of 2025, and they're quite impressive. We've seen revenue increases over 700%. The net asset of Metaplanet is up 26x over 2025. Bitcoin yield over 500%. So really staggering numbers here if you look at the whole year for Metaplanet. What are your thoughts here?
Impressive numbers coming from Metaplanet. What is really interesting is also to see their forecasts, which seem very, very low compared to what they had in 2025. But I think it's a fair assumption considering the markets that we had in 2025 where Bitcoin just rallied. And in 2026, so far, we haven't seen anything like this from Bitcoin. And one thing that is quite impressive to me is that they managed to do all of this basically through the issuance of the common share. And obviously, they played a little bit with short-term loans throughout the year, but all of this was basically done without big leverage. And I think that's what the most impressive thing. So I'm really curious to see how they manage now 2026 or going into 2026 with their preferred shares, because now suddenly they have again this additional power or firepower to be able to accumulate further, and that's why I'm surprised by their forecasts.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about the 2026 forecast is that they still plan to almost double their revenue for the year, and this is what kind of differentiates Metaplanet from other treasury companies, is that they probably want to find a way to pay the dividends on their preferred shares through this revenue, right? For Strategy or Strive, for example, they have issued common stock to build a USD reserve to be able to pay the dividends, and Metaplanet, it looks like they're really trying to create revenue to pay the dividends on the preferred. So that's interesting. And what I've also seen is that they reiterated their goal of Bitcoin accumulation, 100,000 Bitcoin in 2026 and 210,000 by the end of 2027. So it still means that they're quite aggressive in their accumulation target here over the next 2 years. And I'm really looking forward to see if they're able to reach that, because as you mentioned, if we're in a deep Bitcoin bear market, it might be more difficult for them. But I think that's where the prefs come in, right? We don't hear a lot currently. They announced them in 2025. Originally, we heard January they should be released. They haven't been, so I don't know what the plan is, but will be interesting to see how they start to trade, especially given the success of STRC and SATA in the US.
Exactly. So we haven't had too much communication on that front from Metaplanet. So they have this plan to reach 210,000 Bitcoin by 2027, and looking at how they, at least again coming back to the forecast, how they see the market for this year. I'm really curious what's their thought process on how they see this. That's all we had on Metaplanet. Let's talk a little bit about the other Bitcoin treasuries, because now we've had a few interesting guests on the podcast, and obviously we're seeing that we're on a Bitcoin bear market, and even deeper on the Bitcoin treasury front. However, I think what's really positive to see is how the whole market, the different companies are positioning themselves on during this time and building to be able to start accumulating again quite aggressively Bitcoin once the bear market starts turning. Thinking about Capital B and H100, who we had people from the companies come and talk about it, and they seem that they're very eager to get started. They have already built the tools to be able to accumulate, and it feels like they're just ready to get going again in the accumulation machine. So really cool to see, or also hearing from, for example, Arcadia B, how they're looking at the market in Mexico, and how they see the Bitcoin treasury in Mexico play out based on their market, not just following blindly strategies playbook or another playbook, but they're really building and catering for that market. So it's really interesting to see how all of these companies are really focused on building and continuing this accumulation based on where they are, and also their capital market demands. So yeah, I don't know what you think, or how you thought about those discussions, Quentin.
Yeah, it's interesting to see that they're all still building, right? It's early. All of those companies are kind of new to the market, and now they were able to ride a wave the beginning of last year. But since then, the accumulation, it didn't stop completely for them, but it slowed down significantly. But that doesn't mean that they're not building in the background, right? And all of them have interesting plans and are differentiating themselves from each other in those plans of how to accumulate more Bitcoin. And obviously, right now it's very slow. We see a few announcements here and there of Bitcoin buys, but they're very tiny compared to what we've seen earlier in 2025. So the interesting part is not on the accumulation currently. Now it's more of a wait and see market for them. But yeah, they are building in the background and coming up with interesting strategies. So I think it will be interesting to see once the Bitcoin market turns around what they're able to do here.
Okay, so I think that's all we had for you this week. So next week we will try to give you an update from Vegas. We will be at Strategy World. If you're there, come and say hi. We don't know if we will have time to do an episode, but we'll definitely do our best. Want to move to final thoughts?
Yeah, sure. So final thoughts from my end. I think all eyes on strategy still. Right now, again, we're in a bear market, so the big portion of the Bitcoin treasury companies don't do much or announce much right now, but strategy is super fascinating to follow with STRC especially. And let's see if the STRC can keep the peg, even though Bitcoin is below 70,000, to allow them to continue to buy at those prices. And yeah, see if Metaplanet finally releases their preferred. That would be interesting to see as well.
It's great to see, based on our discussions, that the other companies are also building, and I can't wait for them to get also in this accumulation phase. or to build the proper tools to exactly continue accumulation through a bear market. As of right now, the only substantial buyer is strategy, and I'm really also looking forward to see how the volumes on STRC progress throughout the year, because I think that's going to be a great indication of where digital credit in general is heading.
And how long it will take for those products that are built on top to scale as well, right? We've seen Buck Token as one of the first ones offering a savings coin with that is backed by STRC. Basically, that's why they're able to give quite a high yield. They increased the yield, by the way, to 10% over the last week, so that's nice to see. But are any big players, big banks, going to start using STRC to issue some yield products or savings accounts? That if this happens in 2026, that would be super bullish as well.
So there's definitely people building on all fronts, whether it's on the Bitcoin treasuries or on top of the tools like STRC. So definitely, in any case, I think fundamentals are still looking very strong despite the price action. So that's definitely what you should be looking at. All right, then that's all we had. Thanks a lot for listening, and see you on the next one.
Bye-bye, everybody. See you next time.
How many chairs are you sitting on right now?